Onassis Foundation. Dublab.
Welcome to the Quarantine Tapes, a daily podcast from Onassis LA and Dublab. Hosted by Paul Holdengräber, this series chronicles shifting paradigms in the era of social distancing.
Hello?
Hello, could I please speak with Lauren Halsey?
Yeah, this is she.
Hello, Lauren. This is Paul Holdengräber, calling you from the Quarantine Tapes. I'm really so delighted that you could take the call. Hello.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm well, just in the thick of things, but I'm good. How are you?
About the same, whatever that might mean. It certainly is the thick of things, and it's been going on for so long. And so let me ask you to start out with, Lauren, how have you been spending these past 6 or 7 months? I know they've been amazingly busy for you, and I'd love our listeners to know the extraordinary work you're doing right now.
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of everything, and the rhythm of the past 6 or 7 months has been just a really funky balance of a lot. When the quarantine first happened, like 6 or 7 months ago, I thought, because I live around the corner from my studio, that I would, take a bit of an art vacation and, experiment, clean up, do things like that. But as I realized, what the course of things were, I guess we all realized, and seeing the lack of resources, seeing the suffering, just the challenges, every day in my life, I sort of rerouted the time, I thought I would spend experimenting with ideas and form to, animating my community center in a really, really, really dreamy way that I've been wishing to accomplish for a very long time. And that resulted in my assistants, my best friends, my girlfriend, my little cousins, other family members, sort of curating and putting on this food program for the past 20 weeks. We're in week 21.
Extraordinary. Extraordinary. Tell me.
Yeah. In which we distribute at least 600 free organic produce boxes to folks in Watts. And so last week was our 20th week, 11,000 boxes, and we're gearing up for tomorrow. So I've been doing that. I've been doing a bit of the art stuff. I've been hanging out with my cousins a lot. I've been, resting when I can. Just a little bit of everything.
And this project is so extraordinary. How would you pronounce it? Summaeverythang?
Summaeverythang.
Tell me about the name. It's just some of everything. I guess it's slang for some of everything. That's what I thought, but also summer, right? Summertime.
Some of everything. Yeah. I guess just like, sort of vernacular, I guess, but it just, that just means for me, infinite possibility to operate the community center, across plural contexts, plural programs, workshops, just actions and efforts without having to really define, what it is we do, aside from, being concerned with, community transcendence. And so right now, it's a food program, which I never, ever thought the community center space itself will be an assembly line for produce every week.
But then again, we never thought that the world would look the way it does now, in some form or fashion, or maybe we'll get to that. Maybe we could see the signs of it, but perhaps not quite what it's become. But in a way, it's a departure from your usual work, Lauren, but at the same time, it feels like a natural outgrowth of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's, since like day one, there's been a collaborative ethos for, everything that I do, and a community concern and just love and pride with everything that I do. So, having the community center a couple doors down from my studio and having already established a studio practice that happens, with people that I love, it felt pretty smooth or seamless to sort of transition into this effort, with the same ethos in mind as my art practice. So there's that, just as far as like the functionality of it. But then, I've always, no matter, when I was younger, decided whatever I would become, whether it was at the time I wanted to be a basketball player, but if I would have become an accountant or like whatever, sculptor, that there would be a record of service, no matter what I was doing. And so just trying to stay on course with that ambition,
I love that sentence, a record of service. How do you mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, just being of service, being now I can say, now that I have a community center, providing, an institution of comfort, an institution of intellect and education, of creativity, of, now nutrition for the neighborhood to lean on. And I don't know that we have enough of that. No. And, with my interest in just space making, I always knew early on in art school, it was one thing to, represent or reimagine or, propose remixes of spaces for my neighborhood or just like a Black future. But I always knew it was another thing to actually enact it and live it and embody it and propose it in a tangible scale every single day, separate, though it's a cause and effect, but separate from like the imaginative headspace that an installation that I make or whatever might transport you, that I would want to do both all the time. And so it's funny enough, we're in quarantine and that's starting to the work is happening that I've always wanted to do and engage in. In
so many ways, you were ready for it, insofar that one can say that. You've said, Lauren, I've always questioned who's designing the architecture I live in, as well as the architecture that define a neighborhood. I can't separate architecture from other oppressive forces that have the ability to reinforce stereotypes, deplete the morale of a place, and instigate violence. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how it informs the work you do daily, really, as an artist?
Yeah, just growing up in a place where, it already just has so much baggage as far as narratives put on. The community, or just South Central as a whole, advanced, via media, film, just conversation, whatever. And so as a person that, grew up with a father or family with a lot of neighborhood pride, who's been here, via the Great Migration since 1927. I didn't have that baggage about where I'm from. I saw the total opposite. And, the other side of that is having, never gone to school in my neighborhood and being the sort of outsider, insider figure every single day, from whether I was going to school, elementary school in Westchester, or going to, middle and high school around like Fairfax and 18th Street. I just had a visceral response for as long as I can remember coming home, especially taking the streets, not so much the freeway where you're just driving through neighborhoods, but taking the streets and just feeling the weight of architecture and its materiality in certain neighborhoods versus, my neighborhood. And I guess I would say like soft architectural materials versus hard architectural materials, and like these sort of boundaries of materials that would make me feel that a lot of it had to do with these narratives that are completely false being imposed on us, like just myths being imposed on us, but then that being translated via architecture and the way, signage happens, the way materials happen, whether we can just talk about bars on windows or bulletproof this or that or crazy fencing or barbed wire this or that, or just like whatever that was. And not feeling like I agreed with it and feeling like I was being sort of superimposed in like these really like messed up myths of South Central that just weren't true. And I think that there's a few things, but that was one of the reasons that sort of compelled me to make spaces that didn't have that, mess or didn't have that baggage around South Central as this like uber violent, space. It's just not true. But architecture and its materiality would have you think that because like they're choices and they're curated by people as well. That was long. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. And you're talking about creating a space of conviviality and not a space of weightiness and surveillance.
Yeah, exactly.
I was so interested in examining your work and learning about it. The place that collecting occupies in your practice. Collecting seems to be central to your practice. And 100 years ago, when I was a pretend scholar, I wrote about Walter Benjamin, the German philosopher, and the idea of collecting as a form of rescuing, as a form, in a way, bending down to pick up whatever one might find on streets or in different places in a city and holding on to them, keeping them so that they're not forgotten, so that in a way generations in the future might find them. Does that resonate with you? And in a sense, what is your impulse that drives you to gather these materials? And I might also ask you, what kind of materials have you gathered recently during these 6 months of whatever we might call it, isolation?
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't the conceit initially, because I've always been a collector of sorts since I was a kid. But as I've grown older and understand the world a bit more, I feel like now I'm in this like mad dash to collect all of the ephemera I can in my neighborhood and others adjacent to it. Because there's just so much happening, which is like, new infrastructure, displacement and gentrification that, these beautiful moments or these one-offs or just all this material culture that I'm obsessed with, that I find beautiful, complicated, smart. I don't want it to just be erased.
Right.
Sort of gone in the wind. I obsessively collect as far as things that, and some of it shows up in my work, or a lot of it does, but I would say some of it shows up. So like a cave that I built, like I think 3 years ago, I sort of built this archival cave of just like South Central ephemera that I had been collecting consciously since like 2008 when I was in community college. And I saw the function of the cave as like this warehouse or storehouse for all of like, the guts of a place, of a people, and just like this beautiful socio-political record. And so some of it I collect with the intent to reuse in the work, but some of it I just collect in the same way that one might collect coins or baseball cards. It's just their thing, As far as stuff that I've collected in the past 6 or 7 months, collected a lot of like syrupy gas station, like mixed CDs, DJs in the parking lot, sort of slinging mixed CDs. I've collected, I'm always collecting incense. I'm super obsessed with the titles, the names or whatever, and the promise of the myths in the titles. So like, an incense called Cocoa Egypt, an incense called Michelle Obama Extra Strong. What else do I collect? I collect just like every flyer I see. I collect signs. I've been really into, but I also don't want to give myself up.
Right.
I always use the people that I just collect a lot of stuff. Some of the stuff, stays for myself. But just those have been my main focus. The very curated mix CDs right now, and very curated incense sticks.
I mean, in a way, it's a practice that keeps you always in motion.
Totally. My eyes are always just like, they've sort of been trained to look for these things.
Your eyes are tactile in some sense.
Yeah, and now, like, my studio, and I'm thinking about, my girlfriend and my best friends. Now they're sort of like the aesthetic leaders of my studio, and they're out, knowing that I'm on the hunt for the same thing. So they'll come back to the studio with like a bouquet of incense. And it's exactly what I would have picked out. It's like, it's really great.
How fantastic. It's like the evening becomes an evening where you share your bounty.
Exactly, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now,
but not with intent. Like, we're just moving, you know? Like, we go to the gas station and it pops up. Or we're driving down the street and that sign shows up. And then it's like, oh, make a U-turn. Or like, oh, here's the sign. I know you would want that.
Found objects.
So.
Now, you've designed a prototype for a monument to Nipsey Hussle. What is it about him, do you feel, that it was important to memorialize?
I mean, I listen to at least, 1 to 5, Nipsey songs every morning when I'm brushing my teeth. He's like my cup of coffee before my coffee. And I think it's everything to do with actually watching him be a living example of, all the values that I care about. Watching the corner of Crenshaw's Floss and blossom. And, grow beautifully from day one when it was floss and teas. And then, I'm making it up as far as the timeline or chronology of things. But, it was floss and teas. And then a few months later, they got the legit LED signs and it's floss and teas. And you go in and it's like, they got a few more shelves. And then, he got that business next door. Oh, now it's the Marathon store. Oh, now he's made a smart store. And he has Vector 90 and has this like workspace for the neighborhood. And, now he did that, So just watching that growth and seeing it, as all of like LA saw it, it was a collective, I think, vision of him and his transcendence and never forgetting about us. And it wasn't this thing for him about, being successful and leaving the hood. It was about recycling resources, his network, his dollars, his pride, his love back into his subject, his people, his content, And I hope to live the same way. I mean, so many of us do. And I'm forever grateful to have been alive, well, he's been alive, doing that, to actually see it in the flesh. That means everything. It feels attainable.
That was beautiful. Is he still your cup of coffee before your coffee?
Yeah, I start with this song. It's called Face the World. Depending on my mood, I'll start with other ones too, but that's my one.
Lauren, you've said that one of the things you like about Afrofuturism is that it transcends time and allows you to be everywhere at once. What becomes possible when time opens itself in that way that you describe?
I'm not bound to any sort of human baggage or just like earthly problems, because like, a lot of it has to do, with mythmaking, and that mythmaking, not all of it, but some of the conversation around Afrofuturism, and just sort of like mythmaking these sort of fantastical, origin stories for how folks arrived from Africa to America also showed up in a lot of like really beautiful ideological groups that I came across when I was living in Harlem. And so with a few of those groups or the members of those groups collectively, we were able to just like dream up new space because we were just already so deep into this myth, and we all expressed it in different ways. For some it was writing, for some it was music. For me, it was remixing, the function of the hieroglyph. And it just feels like, endless possibility, that I'm able to shapeshift not just myself, but identity, representation, future, people, images. It's just everything at once. It can be some of everything, which I love,
You're working precisely on a variety of what you call hieroglyphic architectural structures. And I think you've begun to answer that question before. Why are hieroglyphs such a potent form of communication for you? And what kind of meaning do they carry? It was so interesting to read about them.
Yeah, so I grew up with a father. He doesn't perform this so much anymore. And his persona, personality with me. But with like a sort of, and I don't mean this in an aesthetic way, but just more like meaning and I guess poetic way, a father who is like sort of like a Sun Ra figure and definitely deeply into or committed to, his studies and myths around, ancient Egypt and I guess, dynasties and queens and pharaohs and ancient Egypt, and would, I guess, try to teach me in between sort of like halftime coming in the house, to grab a drink or a plate about my bloodline or about this pharaonic dynasty or whatever. So growing up just with that in my bones, growing up with part of the force of Parliament Funkadelic and the Trumpetulation album and the way they moved through the cosmos, whether that was outer space, ancient Egypt, underwater, Washington, D.C., Chocolate City, whatever. And then watching those images once, the internet came out, YouTube came out, and I was able to watch the funk operas that Funkadelic was doing in 76 and 78. And then it hit, I'm going somewhere with this, I'm not just rambling, but it sort of landed for me when I moved to Harlem and I met, as I was describing, some of those ideological groups who were taking the myths around ancient Egypt, which are all like very personal. It's not just one thing, but we're taking the myths and expressing them in a tangible way, along with like the heart space or the head space, and so I was meeting folks who were actually like pyramid builders and designers who had been doing that work as sculptors and self-taught architects in these groups since like the 90s. And that felt very powerful for me. And at the time I was going to the Met a lot and for the first time seeing, actual artwork from, eras in ancient Egypt. And I started thinking, what form I could remix to, describe like contemporary people, but through this pharaonic lens. And I landed on the hieroglyph as like a tool. And so I've been carving them ever since. And it's been a very long journey, like about 7-8 years, but I'm working towards building in collaboration with my neighborhood a hieroglyphic architecture that describes past, present, future of Los Angeles on its surface of the architecture.
And very early on in our conversation, you used, I think it was a minute into our conversation, you used the word funk, and some of your installations contain what you call funk mounds. What does a word like funk mean to you? And what it seems to hold, contain a deep meaning for you?
Yeah, I don't know if I can describe what it means like in a Webster style, but I deeply understand the affect of funk for me and what that word, and I don't just mean any funk, I mean Parliament Funkadelic's funk, did for me as a preteen, teenager, adult coming into myself. And I'm still deep in the world and mythos of Funkadelic and all of their just, beautiful sonic landscapes that they gave us. But it means freedom for me. but it's a stylized freedom where I'm able to, experience myself through this lens and this sound that, Dr. Funkenstein has said is all right.
Yeah.
I don't have the language for it, but I've spent all this time, making work to, describe a visual language for what I think funk is. And it's like, it's everything. It's just literally everything. It's freedom. It's maximalism. It's density. It's grit. It's color. It's technicolor. It's just like, it's life. It gives me life.
And it's exuberance and joy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget, Lauren, when I interviewed George Clinton. It was just absolutely deliriously wonderful. I mean, it was so joyous, so filled with energy, so filled with everything I feel we so
Where
much.
did you interview him?
I interviewed him at the New York Public Library, and he was just magnificent, so alive. I mean, it was just marvelous, and those kinds of voices, I feel we need them, and I feel you inhabit them. When this pandemic is over, and let us assume, as I hope you open the doors to your community center in a new way, what will it contain? And can you walk us through the place you're envisioning? And finally, the place you're envisioning, has it changed now in the last 6 or 7 months?
So right now, that's actually, I'm speaking to you from the community center right now, one of its offices. But it'll always be an open floor plan so that it can, accommodate whatever the needs of the programs are, or multiple programs at once. And so I imagine there'll be multiple partitions where, soundproof partitions where I'm making this up, but in one corner, it might be some sort of, tutoring or after school program happening. In the next corner, a couple 100 square feet away, there might be some sort of art making workshop happening around, screen printing. There's an office here that, once I find the funding, will turn into a music studio for children and young adults to engage with music, whether, we can call it like a mini conservatory with instruments or, production classes. Outside, there will be a garden, and it'll function as, a beauty garden where folks can pause from just like the mess of things or mess of the world. It'll be an aesthetic garden with sculptures in there, it's a sculpture garden. And it'll also be a functional garden now that we're involved in a food program where we can actually, harvest what we grow and distribute it, continue to distribute it to the neighborhood and, folks who might want it. It'll be a space for, engaging with, thought, whether that means it's a stage for speakers, whether that means it's a space for theater. I mean, it'll literally be some of everything. It could be anything it wants to be, So as soon as we get out of this moment, though, the most exciting thing for me is starting the tutoring program and opening that up to youth in the neighborhood. And depending on when that happens, in the seasons, I would love to have a surf camp as well.
How wonderful. I really can't wait for it to open. I hope I'll be able to walk in that door and see all of these different things happening together. It feels like what you're describing is a great adventure that is happening nearly simultaneously.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. Lauren, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for taking this time, and how wonderful that you're doing this for your neighborhood. It's really tremendous and a real deep inspiration.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you. All the best to you, and until we meet soon again, I hope I send you a virtual hug.
For sure. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
To support this show and Dublab's progressive programming, go to dublab.com/support.